Yep.
Yes.
Alrighty, you guys. So I think we're gonna go ahead and jump in and get started. So if you all just want to put your mics on mute for now, and then if you have any questions as we're going throughout the presentation, and you don't want to forget them, just feel free to type them into our chat. And when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll kind of comb through the chat and go through any questions that you typed along the way. So for those of you who don't know me or I haven't talked to on the phone yet, my name is Catherine Pelletier, and I am new to the Arts Council, sort of. I joined in January, and my job is overseeing both of the grant programs that we're going to talk about today. So I am happy to answer your questions, and I'm excited that so many of you are interested in applying for these grants. It's really awesome. All right, so just fair warning for today, it's going to be kind of an information dump. I plan on going through all of the information that's on our website surrounding our guidelines for both of these programs with just a little bit more clarity and depth than you might get online. So a lot of info, but hopefully we'll have about 30 minutes at the end to kind of digest and go through questions. At least that's the plan. So we're going to start with the big picture so you can really understand our intentions for these grants. Then we will go through some scoring criteria and requirements that are the same between both of our programs. And then we'll get into some more program-specific information and then some practical next steps. And like I said, hopefully leave 30 minutes for questions at the end. So big picture, let's get started. In kind of the same breath that we acknowledge our intention for these grants, we have to acknowledge the intention of the National Endowment for the Arts for these grants. For those of you who don't know, we received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. Kudos to Steph, our director, for applying and getting those funds. It's awesome. And we get the happy job of taking that money and giving it to you, which is really, really awesome. So the funds that we got from the NEA were part of the American Rescue Plan grants. Some of you might already know, but these grants are earmarked kind of as COVID relief grants. And the National Endowment for the Arts really made this effort intentionally because they rightly acknowledged, and this is in their own words, that the arts are crucial to helping America's communities heal, unite, and inspire, as well as essential to our nation's economic recovery, which is, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir because you agree with that as well. But that's kind of the beating heart for both of our programs. However, we really have a desire to not just see the arts and culture sector recover, but we really want to see them flourish and to move forward. And by extension, you know, our communities will as well. We're really believers in that. So we see these grants that we'll talk about today as reactive to COVID, yes, but moreover, we see them as proactive investments in the future of the arts and in our region at large. So you'll notice, even when you get to the application come August when they open, there's not going to be an extensive section where you have to like forensically dig up all of the ways that COVID has impacted you. We know that it has had significant impact, and we know that that will influence your proposals. But what we are really interested in is what you're doing now and how you're moving forward and how we can support you in that work. So that's kind of the big picture. Our goals spelled out for these grants. As I said, we want to invest in the arts and culture community and their continued growth. That's that really important phrase. And we believe that when we do so, thanks to all of you, we can improve access to and engagement with the arts, specifically amongst underserved populations. And don't worry, I'll talk about that phrase in a second. And that we can also leverage the restorative power of the arts to support the holistic health of our region. And I'll talk about what that means. So I'm going to skip this next slide because I feel like we've already covered that. So holistic health, what does that mean? Holistic health of our region. So that's talking about, you know, not just the physical health of our region or even the economic health of our region, but also the social and mental and emotional facets of health. And I know that, you know, especially given the recent events of, you know, this last couple of years and even the last couple of months, those investments in that social emotional health, as you all know, are so crucial. And we know that the arts have awesome, awesome power to really support all of those different facets of health. So we want to get you guys those resources so that you can do that work. And obviously we can't, meet all of those different needs if we are not reaching our most at need populations. So that's where this term underserved populations really comes into play. Now, I know that there are probably some misgivings when you hear this phrase. Most people, when they hear underserved populations, their mind automatically goes to, oh, that just means race or socioeconomic status. And while these are really significant factors that often limit participation in the arts, we want to clarify that underserved, that word casts a much broader umbrella than you're probably thinking. Underserved could mean the elderly. It could mean those facing financial hardship. It could mean those with limited English proficiency. It could mean those individuals living with disabilities. It could mean troubled youth, or in fact, it could just mean students in general. It could mean, and here's the big one, those who have been isolated by COVID. I would argue that this term, underserved populations, casts a much broader umbrella, like we talked about now versus pre-COVID. There's a lot of people who have isolated themselves either because of, physical constraints, whether that be health issues, economic, challenges. It could also be a lot of anxieties that have popped up because of COVID that have limited people's participation in the arts. So that's a big audience. Ultimately, though, underserved looks different in each of our towns. So we're relying on you guys as the resident experts in your communities to really identify who you are not reaching yet and who you would like to reach, so that we can really deploy these funds to reach. So that's kind of the big picture. Now let's get into some of the more nitty-gritty details. So the what. Like I said, we're going to start with the elements of our programs that are the same, just for comparison's sake. So first and foremost, I'm going to leave this up here for a second. Those who are eligible to receive funding are those who come from one of these towns. So these are the 25 towns that Northwest Connecticut Arts Council serves. So if you come from one of these towns and you plan on using the award funds for activities that are within these towns and primarily benefit these communities, then woohoo, you're one step closer to being eligible. If you're not from one of these towns, I would look at this list carefully now to save yourself from some time. And if you have any questions based on this list of towns, if you are not eligible and you're not sure, just shoot me an email and we can go through it. Okay, so some federal requirements. As I said, we receive this money from the National Endowment for the Arts. So that means any different federal requirements that they gave us that we have to observe, when we give you the money, you also have to observe them. So these are things like accessibility requirements, making sure that you're not being discriminative in your programs. So any of your 504 stuff, transparency, which means that you have to be willing to give us access to records that we believe are relevant to any award activities. And things like historical preservation, which might not impact many of you based on your proposals, but if you're doing any kind of like public artwork, you might want to look out for that. There is a complete list of all of the different federal requirements you need to look out for. At the end of this presentation, I'll shoot you over the link to this presentation when we're done here. And it's also all up on our website. And if you still can't find it after that, just send me an email and I'll send it right to you. Moving forward, scoring criteria. So how are we evaluating your proposals? For both of our programs, the categories that we are scoring you on are the same, even if the questions might vary slightly. So the first category is ready. And if those of you who have applied for grants in the last year or so might have already come across this term before. READY is a framework that was adopted by the Connecticut Office of the Arts, and it stands for relevance, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion. So in our applications, we are going to be asking you to identify 1 or 2 criterion from this list that your proposal best connects with, and explaining a little bit how it does. So you don't necessarily have to explain how it connects with all of these, but just pick 1 or 2 that you really want to focus on. The next kind of lofty different scoring criteria is artistic merit. And I'm going to leave the full definitions that I got from the NEA up here for you. But artistic merit, what it really boils down to is impact. And it's a way of evaluating whether or not your proposal is going to have impact. So to do so, firstly, obviously, it has to be well thought out. So this is where we'll go through items like your budget and your goals and your resources, and make sure that all of those are well established, that they're feasible, because you can't have impact if it's unrealistic, right? And then also, to have impact, you want to be able to identify a target audience. So does your proposal have the potential to reach those underserved populations that we talked about earlier and that you identified? And, if you're going to reach those target audience, it has to be relevant to them, right? So we'll also look forward into your proposals, and we'll make sure that, your goals and your proposal structure is really aligned with the need and with the audience that you already identified. So next is artistic excellence. And artistic excellence really is just about quality. Is your proposal creative and innovative? Are the people, involved in your proposal of quality? Is your organization equipped to be able to manage the funds and carry out the different award activities? And that's pretty much that. Very straightforward. Last but not least is sustainability. And I know this is something that is very important to many organizations. So sustainability is just really considering whether or not the impact of your proposal will continue after the grant funding is used. Another word for this that I really, really liked, I attended a webinar put on by the Americans for the Arts, and they use the word stickiness instead of sustainability. And I don't know why, maybe because I'm just a visual person, but I really loved this concept of your impact, like to the people that you serve, and also sticking to your organizations, because we want these funds to be helpful for you long term, right? So that's another way to think about it. You can think about it as stickiness. All right, so now we're going to get into some program specific information. So let's start with access grants. These grants are a little bit more straightforward, so we'll start with these guys. Who can apply? Access grants are specifically for arts and cultural entities. So just for arts and culture. Whether you are a 501c3 arts and culture organization, that means you're eligible, or if you're a unit of state or local government specifically dedicated to arts and culture. If you are one of those 2 different entities, you have to have an annual operating budget of $500,000 or less. And you have to have regular ongoing arts or cultural programming. So what this looks like is at least 5 years of consistent programming. We will take into consideration interruptions because of COVID. So if you had a program that was running strong and then COVID hit and it wasn't running so strong anymore, we'll of course consider that. This funding is, like I said, for COVID relief in part. So you'll just have to explain that to us. And then arts and culture needs to be explicitly stated in your mission, or as a primary and major focus of, kind of like a supporting mission at least. So really it's just getting at, is arts and culture, intimately woven into the fabric of who you are as an organization? That's what's important to us. So if you meet those criteria and you apply, you can apply for either an award of $2,500 or $5,000. So just ask for what you need. Eligible proposals. So you can ask for, these are general operating support grants, but I like to say general operating support with a not so general purpose, and I'll explain that. General operating support, for those of you who don't know, means that these funds have to go to existing programs and services. So these are things that you have, you've established kind of a pattern for doing. So it's part of your everyday activities. It's part of your mission. This is not new programming. So if you want to try something new, something you've never done before, there might be an avenue when you apply, if you apply for creative partnerships, for exploring that. But Access Grants is not for that. It's for general operating support. Having said that, general operating support does not mean a general unspecified purpose. So general operating support should still be going to specific resources with specific goals in mind to expand access to and engagement with the arts for those underserved populations. So that's why it's not such a general purpose. Some examples I've included up here. You could use the funds to purchase adaptive equipment so that individuals living with physical disabilities can participate in your programs. You could use the funds to be able to provide some scholarships so that those who are facing financial hardship can participate. You could use it for marketing and promotional support so that you can get the word out about what you're doing and start to really engage with your community. So these are just a few examples. There's more on our website, and obviously your brains can cook up lots of wonderful ideas that we haven't thought of. So moving forward, so just to clarify before we move on to creative partnerships, Access Grants cannot be used for-profit activities. So that's where we need to be a little bit careful. If you want to use the funds, for example, for tech support, or you want some updates on your website or something like that, tech support is fine. That's an allowable cost. But if you're using it to build a web shop where you're selling your products or something, that wouldn't be allowed because it's a for-profit activity. So you just have to be careful there. And if you have questions, like I said, just shoot me an email and we can work through it together. Must be specific. So no miscellaneous costs. That's that general operating support within that. So general purpose, again, it can't just be given an acknowledgement of financial hardship. So if you are an organization that has really been hit by COVID, we want to get you funds, obviously, but you would have to tell us, what are you using the funds for? Probably self-explanatory, but just to clarify, and focus on increasing access to the arts. All right, so that is Access Grants. Let's get on to creative partnerships. Creative partnerships grants, there are going to be two parties involved in this application and proposal. There is first the primary applicant. And this is the person who is not only filling out the application in its entirety, but they are the person who we are giving the money to. So they are in charge of managing those funds. And this person, the primary applicant, has to be an arts entity. So it could be an individual artist. It could be anyone who is eligible for Access Grants. So those are your 501c3 arts and culture organizations. That's arts departments at schools. That's units of states and local government that are, specifically dedicated to arts and culture. The creative partner, on the other hand, does not have to be an arts entity. It can be, by all means, but it doesn't have to be. So it could be any 501c3 organization. It could be the counseling department at a school. It could be any units of state or local government, federally recognized tribal governments, any social service organizations. And they can participate as a creative partner. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, what exactly is a creative partner? Because I keep throwing around that word. A creative partner is someone who is meaningfully contributing to the planning, execution, and evaluation stages of your proposal. So this is not an artist who is designing a graphic for some part of your proposal. That's awesome, do that, bring them into the picture, but that's not a creative partner unless that artist is helping you land the event of the proposal. That's how they're contributing, and then they're also helping you out with the evaluation piece. So it's really someone on whom the proposal really hinges. And it should also be someone who's reaping some mutual benefits from the award activities. Let's move on. So that's who can apply. Now, here's the next tricky part. For creative partnerships, there are no set award amounts. So it's not like access grants where you can apply for 2,500 or 5,000. Creative partnerships is open-ended. And usually when I say that, you kind of get like two responses. It's either freedom or panic. And I totally understand both, because as an individual, I like fluctuate between the two on a day-to-day basis. So I get both, but hopefully we can get you all to the freedom perspective. Just if you start with the budget, that's my recommendation, to start really itemizing out what exactly you would need to make your proposal possible. And make sure that you're fairly compensating anyone who's involved, and make moderate choices, and then ask for what you need. And the reason why we decided to do it this way is because we felt that sometimes when you prescribe an award amount, you either have to overinflate your project costs to be able to kind of meet that minimum, or you have to restrict your proposal costs to make sure that you stay underneath the ceiling. And in both instances, it really is kind of detrimental to the impact your proposal can have. So we wanted to take away that restriction and give you the freedom to really take stock of what you need, and hopefully get it to you. Now there is an option for partial funding. So if you submit a proposal and we think it's really interesting and we want to help, but maybe you can't give you the full funding, we can have a conversation with you about the possibility of partial funding. So that is always an option as well. Eligible proposals. So I kind of broke this up into 3 categories, even though there is some kind of crossover between the 3. You could have new projects or programs, and this is the part that really differs from access grants, but there's a catch, kind of. So if you want to have a new project, the creation of new work, or start a new program, it has to be submitted by an individual artist or a collection of individual artists. And that's because of the parameters that were given to us from the National Endowment for the Arts. We can only give money for new programming if it comes from an individual. So if you're an organization who's like, oh, I kind of want to like explore some of those options for new programming, partner with an individual artist. They can apply and you can kind of reap some of the mutual benefits. It could be used for expansions or new realizations of existing programming. So let's say you are an arts organization who offers weekly arts classes. That's great. And let's say you partner with a social service organization who has clients that could really benefit from those different programs. Maybe you submit a proposal to get you the extra equipment you need to be able to provide that access to that social service organization and their clients. Then it's technically general operating support, so we can do it. I hope that makes sense. It could also be like exchange of creative services. Let's say you're a school, high school arts department, and you have a group of really talented seniors that want to showcase their work. And you partner with an arts gallery that has this space and is willing to host you so that you can have an art show. That's kind of a cool exchange of creative services, and it's making sure that everyone is fairly compensated for the services that they're offering. So that is the different kinds of parameters of eligibility. More examples of the exchange of creative services. It could be workshops, use of space materials, consultations. That's kind of cool. So maybe you see some opportunities for professional learning that exist with an individual artist or a different arts organization, and you can partner with them and kind of proposal that way. So for comparison's sake, because I know that there are many of you who express that you're still trying to decide which program best suits your needs, I'll leave this up here. These are the kind of key differences between our 2 programs. So creative partnerships, flexible award amounts. If your proposal is going to take more money than $5,000, well, access grants isn't going to work for you, right? Because access grants is for $2,500 or $5,000. Creative partnerships, it has the possibility of those new projects and programs. Access grants, no new programming. Creative partnerships, non-art specific entities can participate. That's great. And in fact, we really want you to participate. We really want to see these cross-sector partnerships. Access grants, only arts and cultural entities. Creative partnerships, you have to have, and this is really important, you have to have at least one creative partner. Can't even complete the application without it. You do not have to have more than one. If you want to, by all means, go for it. Although we probably recommend you maybe don't push it much past like 3 creative partners, but you have to have at least one. Access grants, you can apply independently. Maybe you don't need a creative partner, and that's awesome too. So that is kind of a quick comparison. So lastly, let's get into some of the practical next steps for you. Our application portal is going to be, it's called Smarter Select. So that's what you'll be applying through. We are going to post the link to the application probably in July before applications open. You'll create a user account and everything through your application will be within that portal. We can also communicate with you through that portal about deadlines so you don't miss anything. And if we need more information from you in your application as we go along, we can communicate through Smarter Select as well. This is also if you are applying for creative partnerships where your creative partner will do their bit to complete the application. So essentially what happens, it's really pretty easy. As the primary applicant for creative partnerships, you're going to give us your creative partner's email. And then Smarter Select does all the work. It goes ahead and it sends an email to your creative partner that says, hey, we need some information from you before this application is complete. And all your creative partner will have to do, we're calling it a statement of support, is provide a brief narrative that details what exactly they're contributing to the project or proposal and how this proposal is also meeting the needs of their target audience. And then they'll just have to do some very, very brief stuff that we need for reporting and certify that they are going to comply with all those federal requirements that we talked about earlier as well. And that's it. So it's really pretty simple. This UEI, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this. I'm sure some of you have already encountered this. So if you're an organization, you might have had a DUNS number before. UEI stands for Unique Entity Identifier, and as of April, it's replacing the DUNS number. So if you are an organization who wants to get our money, you will need to register for a Unique Entity Identifier. And there is a link at the end of this presentation that gives you explicit instructions on how to get that. When you register for a UEI, it's also going to ask you if you want to register for a full SAM registration, is what it's called. For the purpose of our grants, you do not need a full SAM registration because you're getting the federal funding through us, but you do need that unique entity identifier. And I have been getting some feedback saying that that process is taking a little bit of time. So the sooner you do this, the better, because you'll need this at the time of application. Individuals who are applying for our grants, you don't need to worry about it. You just give us your social security number so we can get you your money. So that is exciting for you. The next thing, so timeline. This is what many of you are asking about. So right now we're still in the brainstorming phase. If at any time in the next couple of months, you want to run some proposal ideas past either me or Steph, feel free to shoot us an email and we'd be happy to be a sounding board for your ideas or answer any questions that you might have. Applications will open on August 1st. And like I said, you will have the link on our website and we'll share it via email and social media as well for our application in advance of when they open. Applications close October 31st, and that's a pretty big application window. We recommend, especially if you're applying for creative partnerships, that you don't wait till the end of the window because you and your creative partner or partners have to have all of your stuff completed before we can review your application. So that takes some interesting facilitation work. So I would get on that. November is our review period. So we're going to have a peer review panel that is looking at your applications. So Steph and I don't really have a hand in that part. We're going to pass it off to different friends and colleagues to review your applications. A little plug there, if you know of anyone who wants to participate in either of our peer review panels, send them my way. That would be really, really awesome. December, we plan to announce the grantees and we will disperse the funds to you. And October 2023, so that's almost a full year after you get your funds, you have to have all your money spent and submit your final reports. So quick note on fund disbursement. You will get your money 2 to 4 weeks, we say, after we announce who gets the money. And the reason why I can't give you an exact date is because we have to wait for the NEA to give us the money first. And we're not exactly sure how long that will take. We're hoping it's going to be closer to the 2-week mark, but just for your own planning purposes, I would plan for 4 weeks just to be safe. If you apply for and receive a creative partnerships grant for more than 10,000, so 10,000 or more, you will receive your funds in 2 disbursements. And that's the only people this applies to. You'll get half of your money when everyone else gets their money in December, and you'll get the other half in June following a quick status report. And that's just for accountability purposes since it is a larger award. If you're not applying for that much money, just block that out of your brain. You don't have to worry about it. As I said, if you have any questions at all, shoot me an email. My office hours technically are from 3:30 to 5 every day. Those are just the times I can be sure that my 8-month-old daughter is not going to join us in our meetings. Otherwise, shoot me an email and I can meet anytime that's convenient for you. I just need a little heads up, and I am happy to answer any and all questions. If I can't answer your questions, if Steph can't answer your questions, we will go to the NEA and they will answer your questions. But either way, you'll get an answer. And with that is all I have to say. Like I said, I will share this link for you with all these links to the documents that I referenced. But now's the time we can kind of take some questions, unless Steph, you have anything to add before we get to that.
No, thank you, Catherine. This was great. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. Let's see. Do you have a question, Rhonda?
I do. We are a brand new organization up at Woodridge Lake in Goshen, Connecticut. And we are in a community, and we have organized this so far to be a volunteer. So we're not going through a lot of money. The office has been giving us support. However, we realize that there are some costs that would ease accessibility for some of our clients, so to speak, or to further our program. For instance, there are museum trips with docent lectures, but there's admission to those museums. Perhaps we could qualify for funding for that. We are going to have different programs. For instance, we've got Danielle Mailer lives in Goshen, and she's been very generous with her time to volunteer to come and give us a lecture, slideshow, etc. in our clubhouse. However, other people have not been that generous. So we might need some funding to pay for lectures or workshops. Would we qualify? We don't have a budget because we have 3 people who have put this together over the winter in 3 different localities and Zoomed it. We just had our first meeting in person this morning, and we qualified to meet all of Woodridge's things that they need as far as Robert's rules, how meetings are done, records, agenda. But I don't know what you require from us, and do we qualify?
Yeah, so and Steph, feel free to add anything if I don't get to it. I would say yes, it sounds like you would qualify. Obviously, since you're a new organization, you wouldn't be able to show us the 5 years of consistent programming. I would just, make sure that when it comes to the application that you're including details that of those different supports that you just mentioned that you've put in place to be able to manage the funds. In terms of the kinds of eligible costs that you're mentioning, I don't hear any red flags. Just be careful if you're applying for access grants for those general operating support grants. Just make sure that it's, the funds are going to get lecturers for programs that you already established or are planning to establish. So it's not necessarily new programming. I know it's kind of hard since you're a new organization. But like personnel costs, those are allowable costs. And transportation, things like that are different accessibility things. Those are all perfectly eligible. So I think it sounds eligible. Steph, do you have any conflicting?
I was thinking in terms from what you were telling us, we probably would come under creative partnerships more than the other.
Okay.
We wouldn't be looking at a large grant.
Yeah.
We have a calendar that we've created through September, through the end of the summer. So we know what we need. Luckily, our office is supporting us at this point. So we don't need that kind of thing. And we're using MailChimp as a means of communicating. We had to sign up and we're communicating that way. It's basically museums and lecturers and possibility if there was financial need to get some basic art supplies to help people engage with us.
Yeah, partnering with lecturers for different workshops and things like that. That's great for creative partnerships. Yeah, I think that sounds eligible.
Okay, I guess I'll speak to there's 3 of us who are sharing the chair of it, who have come together to create this. So I'll get back to the other 2 and I'm sure you'll be hearing from us. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention.
I think we have another question from Joan, Catherine.
Great.
Hi there. My name is Joan Novesky. I'm the clinical manager for the Center for Youth and Families. We're the child advocacy center in the area, and we do all of the behavioral health work with the kiddos in Northwest Connecticut, and we handle all of the child abuse investigative cases. So I was curious as to, have you ever worked with an agency like ours, which we're not typically arts, but we use art as a medium to help kids to express. We're also looking at trying to, we have a very, very big DEI wing of our organization, and we're doing all kinds of inclusivity work. And so trying to bring some of that visually to our building so that the kiddos, when they come in, feel like they belong here and that there are people, all kinds of people who are welcome here. So have you ever, have organizations like mine ever applied? We're just trying to be creative here.
Yeah, well, these grants are brand new. So no one's applied for these grants before. Having said that, I know that, Steph and the council have done work with different social service organizations around our region, and the kinds of things like you're describing are awesome and totally, arts integrations that we want to see in our community. That's a large part of the intention for creative partnerships. So we're really excited that, you want to take part in this program. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, we do. We've had an art group going, which are for our kiddos that really have a hard time, doing talk therapy.
Yeah.
So we have some specific kind of things that we use, but I guess I have to, maybe I should get in touch with you guys just to run some ideas, because my head is spinning now with all that you.
Yeah, got lots of good things cooking. Yeah, of course. Feel free to email us with your different ideas, and we're happy to schedule a different chat and talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see, anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm Jason Roberts, Village Center for the Arts in Milford. There's 2 sections. I'm sorry, I had customers come in and I'm by myself, so I missed some of this. But there's 2 components to this money, and right now I'm assisting an Afghanistan family. The guy's a master potter,
Yeah.
And is it something that I would write a grant under us to help him, or would he write the grant on his own? And if I do that, does it take away my ability to ask for VCA as well?
That's a great question. Yeah, and I saw that question. So I would tell him to apply for creative partnerships as an individual artist,
Okay.
and you can participate as a creative partner. If you are participating as a creative partner, you can still apply for access grants. Because we don't want to scare people away from lending a hand and supporting, your fellow organizations and artists. So if you are participating as a creative partner, not a primary applicant, you can still apply for access grants. So yeah, that would not shoot you in the foot for your organization.
All right, cool. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, listen, is anybody from you guys coming on the 5th? Because we're doing
I'm
the
gonna
open house
try. Yeah, it
presentation.
looks really cool.
It's going to be awesome. It's just
Very
amazing.
We have another question from Christine.
Oh, great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Harris, and I'm the Development Associate at the Palobolus Dance Theater in Washington. And I just was wondering if we could apply for the Creative Partnership Grant for a project that we're currently developing, but has been funded by other sources.
Yes, there can't be like overlapping costs with other federal funds. So you just have to be a little careful with that. If you're applying for these grants and you're going to put them to resources for the same program, but they're not the same resources, I would say that's completely fine. Just beware of those overlapping costs.
Okay, thank you very much.
If anyone else has a question,
Yeah.
you can raise your hand. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Leslie Elias. I run Grumbling Griffins, a nonprofit here, celebrating our 42nd year. I have a similar kind of, well, first of all, Jason, I'd love to know if June 5th you're having an opening there in New Milford.
Yeah, it's going to be like a presentation. We have a slideshow. He's going to do a presentation. Then I'm going to bring a pottery wheel upstairs and he's going to do a demo.
Wonderful.
It's from 2:30 to 4 on Sunday the 5th.
Fabulous. Okay, so my question is similar about the access versus the creative partners, and it sounds like it doesn't have to be versus, though there are gray areas that I'd like to talk to you about in terms of with the access. If, for instance, if I was collaborating, we are a nonprofit children's theater, and we are embarking on a program with the Warner Theater, for instance, doing American Sign Language and this kind of thing. It's new, but it's part of an ongoing outreach. So I don't know whether that's better as a creative partnership. What I'm wondering about is if we need general operating, we have, need the access would fit well, but we would love to do creative partnerships with various groups. I mean, for instance, working with the woman that does the work for children, for instance, we do drama therapy. So let's say they wanted to bring us in and other groups. I mean, I just want to learn more about, is there a limit to how many creative partnerships if we were to get an access? I mean, since we are a touring theater and we go and we do drama and music with children and teens and seniors, that's our job, to provide and work with other
Right.
people. Would we encourage more than one creative partner or would be like less likely that if we were more than one creative partner plus access, that it would lessen those people's chance if they engaged with us as a partner?
I don't think it would lessen your chance. There's a couple of thoughts that are going through my head. You can have more than one creative partner for sure. And in fact, sometimes that's preferable if you can get a lot of people who are interested in the same service. And you all want to submit that application. That's a really strong application because that impact is really broad. I would just make sure that it's, one cohesive vision that you and your creative partners are all, you know, uniting underneath. So don't maybe submit an application that has like 10 separate ideas with 10 separate creative partners. That's all I would say for that. Again, you can apply for an access grant, but you just have to make sure that you're participating as a creative partner, not as a primary applicant. And if you're kind of thinking through your ideas and you're not quite sure how you would apply, feel free to send me an email so we can kind of spell it out a little bit in greater detail. But like I said to Jason, if you're a creative partner participating in creative partnerships, you can still apply for access, and it's not going to hurt your chances. I don't think so.
But as a creative partner, you have to have the other individual, or you can actually be the individual in the creative partner plus as an organization do an access.
So, okay, so I think if you're applying as the primary applicant, you can't also apply for access grants, because as the primary applicant, you're getting that funding directly.
Okay, so one or the other, but you can be, yeah, okay, got it.
Say that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
sorry,
all.
I know it's confusing. There's like a lot of, we're trying to work within these restrictions we have from the NEA, not like we're trying to play the system, but we're trying to explore the wiggle room there. So it's a little murky sometimes.
Yeah, I would say, I would add that at the ground-based level, you cannot apply for both.
Yes.
Unless it's a situation like Jay's example, the perfect example. He would like to apply for his organization for access, but he also wants to help provide services for an artist who would be the applicant on the creative partnership. So he's not applying for the creative partnership, really. He's just helping someone else enhance their application through partnership.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
That's helpful.
Cool. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm Stuart, the visionary director of personaland.com. We're not a 501c3. We're fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas. So we're kind of in that gray area. And two, we're an online arts village. So we actually have artists from 47 countries participating now. So we're kind of, you know, I'm set in Connecticut, but we're kind of set around the world. So if for us to become a creative partner, we'd probably want to work with somebody in the Northwest Connecticut area. Is that a question?
Yeah.
Or could we creatively partner with agencies all over the state of Connecticut? Would that be better, or would it be better just to be in Northwest Connecticut with a pilot program?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say focus on Northwest Connecticut. I'm actually exploring the hard answer to that question about whether or not creative partners from outside our region are allowed. And I'll get back to you with the for sure answer as soon as the NEA gets back to me. But I would say focus on Northwest Connecticut, just because, you know, that's why we applied for the funding to the NEA, was to support our region, and that was the intention that we spelled out. So we want to honor that. That's what I would probably say.
And that I'm set in Northwest Connecticut.
Yeah,
it's okay, even though my agency is in a global way.
Right. Yeah, as long as it's, you know, for activities within Northwest Connecticut, then yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all.
Of course. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I remember the historical preservation was a piece there in the beginning. Is there like a definition of what's historical? Like, would mid-century architecture be included, you think?
Yeah, so it's kind of probably on a case by case basis. You'll probably have to do some research based on what exactly your proposal is. Steph, do you have something to add to that?
I do, yes. So that piece of it is specifically about the National Registry of Historic Places. You can't paint a mural on something that's protected as a historically protected site, basically is what that means.
Okay. But if you had a preservation-minded project that was sort of like an event-based thing, like a film screening or something like this.
Yeah.
And for the preservation of something mid-century, which often doesn't fall into historical categories, I guess.
Yeah.
I just want to find
the
that out.
program is all encompassing, all arts, all culture. Historical preservation falls under that category. So that would be an allowable category.
And that was the access grant, the partnership. Was that the access grant?
For things like historical preservation, is that what you're asking? Which that it applies to both. Yeah, and thank you actually for bringing that up. All federal requirements apply to both programs. So, and while we're talking about that, I just shared in the chat the link to this presentation, and at the end of the presentation, you can see by the screen that I'm sharing right now. There are three links there. One's to allowable costs, just quick reference, so you can go through all those and see whether or not your proposal would be eligible. And then there's a link to all those federal requirements that spells them out in a little bit more detail, so you can double check that.
I have a question.
Yep.
It also pertains to historical preservation. I'm with the Hunt Library in Falls Village and working on a project with the Falls Village Canaan Historical Society. We discovered some glass slides by a female photographer working in the area from about the 1890s to 1910s. They're portraits of Falls villagers. And what we were thinking of doing with these glass plates was having them printed, framed, and put in various public spaces around town so they could be seen. Most of my motivation in working in the arts for the past 20 years has been in public spaces. And that's why I've been working as a volunteer at the Hunt Library for this long. Would a project like that we're restoring historical photographs and putting them throughout the community, would that be something
that's eligible?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that sounds like an awesome way to engage the community, which would be perfect for creative partnerships. Steph, do you have any qualms about that? I mean, obviously you'll have to look into those.
Yeah, I think I think yes. The only thing is that I know that the NEH, the National Endowment for Humanities, also is doing COVID funding. So we just have to double check on that very specific point and make sure that that is allowable now that I think of it.
I will write and call them and show you a little bit of what we're planning.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, I think we probably have time for one or two more questions if anyone's got any before we wrap things up. But if there aren't any other questions, then that's fine too.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
do a great job at the Northwest Arts Council, please.
Yes,
so
we are
much.
lucky to have you.
Yes, really.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I hope I can see a bunch of you on the 5th. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, definitely.
You
Awesome.
give us the
Thank
address?
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Hey.
much.